Part 3. The Last Gamble. Nobunaga's talents were not limited to the battlefield. He was also an outstanding ruler and economist. He understood that military strength must be built on a solid economic foundation. He implemented many groundbreaking policies. He abolished the monopolistic toll booths of the old powers, creating free markets, Rakuichi Rakuza, that allowed merchants to travel and trade freely. He built roads, standardized currency, and actively promoted foreign trade, especially with the Portuguese. These policies created a dynamic and prosperous economy in his domain. The abundant revenue from taxes and trade allowed Nobunaga to invest in purchasing firearms, building castles, and maintaining a powerful standing army. Now, Nobunaga was at the pinnacle of power and victory. He controlled nearly half of Japan. All major enemies had been destroyed or subdued. Only a few large clans in the west and north had not yet bowed their heads. The unification of Japan seemed only a matter of time. He sent his most talented and loyal general, a man who had risen from being a sandal-bearing peasant, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, to lead an army to subdue the Mori clan in the west. His ally, Tokugawa Ieyasu, was dealing with the remnants of the Takeda and the Hojo clan in the east. As for Nobunaga himself, he was preparing to head to the Western Front to support Hideyoshi. On his way, he stopped at Honnō-ji Temple in Kyoto to rest. He was accompanied by only a small retinue of a few dozen people, with no army for protection. He was confident that no one would dare touch him in the very center of his power. It was a fatal confidence. Another of his generals, Akechi Mitsuhide, a talented and trusted man, was commanding an army nearby. Mitsuhide was supposed to lead his troops to the Western Front under Nobunaga's orders. But on the night of June 21st, 1582, Akechi Mitsuhide did something world-shaking. He suddenly ordered his army to turn around and head for Kyoto. When a general asked for the destination, Mitsuhide uttered a famous line. "The enemy is at Honnō-ji." Akechi Mitsuhide's army, over 10,000 strong, surrounded the small temple. Nobunaga and his guards fought to the end, but against such overwhelming odds, they could not resist for long. Mitsuhide ordered the temple to be set on fire. Nobunaga, wounded and with no escape, retreated deep inside the burning temple and performed the ritual of seppuku, ritual suicide by disembowelment. He did not want the enemy to take his head. Oda Nobunaga, the man who had shaken all of Japan, ended his life at the age of 47, just as his dream of unifying the realm was about to be realized. The reason for Akechi Mitsuhide's betrayal remains one of the greatest mysteries in Japanese history. Some theories suggest he was publicly humiliated by Nobunaga, others that he had his own ambitions, or that there might have been a conspiracy behind it. But whatever the reason, his actions completely changed the course of history. News of the incident at Honnō-ji spread like wildfire. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who was busy besieging a Mori clan castle, received the terrible news. Any general in that situation would have panicked. But not Hideyoshi. With astonishing decisiveness, he immediately concealed the news of Nobunaga's death. He quickly negotiated peace with the Mori clan, accepting terms favorable to them so he could withdraw his army immediately. Then, he led his entire army on a forced march, day and night without rest, back towards Kyoto. This march is known as the Chugoku Ogaeshi, the return from the Chugoku region. In just a few days, Hideyoshi's army appeared near Kyoto, taking Akechi Mitsuhide completely by surprise. Mitsuhide, after killing Nobunaga, had failed to gather the support of other lords. He was isolated. At the Battle of Yamazaki, Hideyoshi, under the banner of "Avenging Our Lord," easily crushed Mitsuhide's army. Akechi Mitsuhide had to flee and was later killed by local peasants. His short-lived, 13-day reign was over. Hideyoshi had become the avenging hero. After eliminating the traitor, the next question was, who would inherit Nobunaga's legacy? A conference of the top Oda retainers was held at Kyoto Castle. Factions began to form. One side supported Nobunaga's third son, Nobutaka. Another faction, led by Hideyoshi, put forth a surprising choice. Hideyoshi brought a 2-year-old child to the conference, Samboshi, later Hidenobu, the son of Nobunaga's deceased eldest son. Hideyoshi argued that by right, the direct grandson was the legitimate heir. This was a stroke of political genius. By placing a child as the heir, Hideyoshi could easily manipulate and seize power as the regent. The other retainers, though displeased, could not object in the face of the prestige of the man who had just avenged Nobunaga. Hideyoshi had successfully seized the Oda legacy. He concentrated all power in his own hands, gradually eliminating Nobunaga's remaining sons and opposing retainers. Meanwhile, Tokugawa Ieyasu, Nobunaga's longtime ally, chose to support another of Nobunaga's sons, Nobukatsu. A confrontation between Nobunaga's two greatest successors, Hideyoshi and Ieyasu, was inevitable. The two powerful armies faced each other at the Battle of Komaki Nagakute. Tokugawa's forces won several smaller engagements thanks to Ieyasu's military skill. However, Ieyasu realized that a direct confrontation with Hideyoshi, who now held the legitimacy and resources of the entire Oda clan, would be a costly and endless war. Ieyasu, the master of patience and pragmatism, decided to resolve the conflict through negotiations. The two sides signed a truce. Ieyasu agreed to become a vassal of Hideyoshi, but in return, he kept his domain and was granted some autonomous privileges. Ieyasu had once again chosen to bow his head and bide his time. Freed up after subduing Ieyasu, Hideyoshi continued to complete Nobunaga's unfinished work. He conquered the remaining clans in Shikoku, Kyushu, and finally subdued the powerful Hojo clan in the east. In 1590, Toyotomi Hideyoshi became the first man to unify all of Japan after more than 100 years of chaotic warfare. The sandal-bearing peasant boy of yesterday now stood at the pinnacle of power, master of the entire realm. After unifying the country, Hideyoshi enacted a series of policies to consolidate his power and prevent civil war from recurring. He conducted a nationwide sword hunt, confiscating all weapons from peasants and monks, allowing only the samurai class to bear arms. This created a clear class division and ended the situation where a peasant could become a lord. He also resurveyed all the agricultural land to impose a strict tax system, increasing the central government's revenue. Despite sitting at the pinnacle of power, Hideyoshi could not be appointed shogun. This position, by tradition, was reserved for those with lineage from the Minamoto clan. Hideyoshi, with his peasant origins, could not have that honor. Instead, he was granted an even more prestigious title by the emperor at the time, Kampaku, imperial regent. He built magnificent castles like Osaka Castle and lived a life of ultimate luxury. But Hideyoshi's ambitions did not stop at Japan. Perhaps feeling the islands had become too small, or perhaps wanting to find a new goal for his warlike lords, he began to plan for overseas expansion. His target was none other than China, under the Ming dynasty. And to get to China, he needed a stepping stone. That stepping stone was Korea. In 1592, Hideyoshi launched a large-scale invasion of Korea. Over 150,000 Japanese troops, equipped with matchlocks and seasoned by decades of war, landed on the peninsula. Initially, the invasion went smoothly. The Japanese forces, with their superior strength, quickly captured the capital, Seoul, and advanced deep into Korean territory. But the further they went, the fiercer the resistance they encountered. The Ming dynasty sent reinforcements to aid Korea. At sea, Admiral Yi Sun-sin's fleet, with its famous turtle ships, repeatedly defeated the Japanese navy, cutting off their supply lines. The war became a quagmire. The Japanese suffered heavy losses and were gradually pushed back. Hideyoshi, directing the war from Japan, grew increasingly despondent at the news of failures. The invasion, which was supposed to bring glory, had now become a burden. He eventually ordered a withdrawal. Not long after, in 1598, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the man who had risen from the bottom of society to unify a nation, died of a serious illness. His dream of conquering Asia had vanished into thin air. Before he died, Hideyoshi's greatest worry was his only son, Hideyori, who was just a young boy at the time. To protect his son's future, he established the Council of Five Elders, Gotairo, consisting of the 5 most powerful lords, to jointly assist Hideyori until he came of age. Among those 5 elders, one stood out above all others in terms of power, wealth, and experience. That was Tokugawa Ieyasu. Hideyoshi, on his deathbed, made Ieyasu and the other elders swear an oath of loyalty to his son. But, in his heart, he probably knew that once the tiger is out of its cage, no oath can bind it. History seemed poised to repeat itself. The death of Hideyoshi once again pushed Japan to the brink of a new civil war. The Council of 5 Elders, created to maintain balance, quickly became polarized. Tokugawa Ieyasu, as the wealthiest and most powerful lord, began to make his moves. He formed alliances with other lords, made decisions on his own without consulting the council, and gradually consolidated power. Rumors began to spread. Ieyasu would seize the Toyotomi legacy, just as Hideyoshi had seized the Odas. Ieyasu's actions spurred another man into action. That man was Ishida Mitsunari. Mitsunari was not one of the 5 elders, but one of the 5 commissioners, Gobujo, another council responsible for civil affairs. Mitsunari was a talented administrator and fiercely loyal to Hideyoshi and the Toyotomi clan. He despised Ieyasu and saw his actions as a betrayal. Mitsunari decided he had to stop Ieyasu at all costs. He began to ally with other lords who also feared or were jealous of Ieyasu's growing power, especially the lords from western Japan. An anti-Ieyasu coalition was formed. In response, Ieyasu also gathered his supporters, mainly lords from eastern Japan who had long-standing relationships with him or were promised rewards. All of Japan was divided into 2 blocks. The Western Army, led by Ishida Mitsunari, with the stated purpose of protecting the heir, Toyotomi Hideyori. They assembled a large force, including many great clans like the Mori, Uesugi, and Shimazu. The Eastern Army, led by Tokugawa Ieyasu, with the goal of destroying the troublemakers and rebels who opposed the established order. The 2 sides began mobilizing troops, engaging in small skirmishes, and playing intense mind games. Eventually, both massive armies advanced towards a location that would decide the fate of all of Japan. On October 21st, 1600, in a small valley in Mino province called Sekigahara, the 2 armies faced each other. This would be perhaps the largest, most important, and bloodiest battle in samurai history. A total of about 160,000 troops from both sides participated. The entire future of Japan would be decided in a single day. That morning, Sekigahara was shrouded in a thick fog. The Western army of Ishida Mitsunari had the geographical advantage. They had arrived first and occupied the high ground surrounding the valley, forming an encirclement of Ieyasu's eastern army. In terms of numbers, the two sides were nearly equal, though the Western army seemed to have a slight edge. In theory, Mitsunari held a winning hand, but Ieyasu, the old fox of the Sengoku period, had his own trump cards. The battle began as the fog lifted. The fighting was incredibly fierce. The Eastern Army's units were attacked from multiple sides and fell into a disadvantageous position. Ieyasu, standing at his command post, remained calm and observed. He was waiting. He was waiting for betrayal. Before the battle, Ieyasu had secretly contacted several commanders of the Western Army. He had promised land and power to anyone who would switch to his side at the decisive moment. One of them was Kobayakawa Hideaki, a young lord commanding 15,000 troops on a strategic hill. Hideaki had promised to side with Ieyasu, but when the battle broke out, he hesitated. His troops simply stood still on the hill, not joining the fight. Hideaki's hesitation made Ieyasu impatient. The battle was at a stalemate, and he needed a push. Ieyasu gave a bold order: fire the matchlocks at Kobayakawa's position. Those shots were not meant to attack, but to remind. The message was clear: act now, or you will be my enemy. The reminder worked. Kobayakawa Hideaki finally made his decision. He ordered his 15,000 men to attack the flank of another Western Army unit. Kobayakawa's betrayal created a domino effect. Several other Western Army commanders, who had also secretly made deals with Ieyasu, saw this and immediately switched sides. The Western Army's formation collapsed in an instant. From a position of advantage, they were suddenly being attacked from the front and from within their own ranks. Chaos and panic spread. Ishida Mitsunari, despite his best efforts to rally his troops, could not turn the tide. The Battle of Sekigahara ended in a total victory for Tokugawa Ieyasu. The Western Army was annihilated. Ishida Mitsunari and many other loyal Western lords were captured and later executed. Epilogue: The dawn of an era. After the victory at Sekigahara, Tokugawa Ieyasu became the most powerful man in Japan, with no rival left to challenge him. He confiscated the lands of the defeated lords and redistributed them to his supporters. 3 years later, in 1603, Tokugawa Ieyasu was appointed Sei Taishogun, shogun by the emperor. He established a new shogunate government in Edo, modern-day Tokyo. The bloody and chaotic Sengoku period, which had lasted for over 150 years, was finally over. Tokugawa Ieyasu, the hostage boy of long ago, who had spent his entire life learning the 2 words patience, had finally achieved his ultimate goal. He had outlived all his rivals, and when the opportunity came, he seized it without mercy. His Tokugawa clan would rule all of Japan for the next 250 years, ushering in a long period of peace and stability, known as the Edo period. The story of 3 great men: Oda Nobunaga, who shattered the old world; Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who built a new world from the rubble; and Tokugawa Ieyasu, who perfected and maintained that world, had come to a close. An epic tale of ambition, talent, luck, and the ironies of fate which shaped the Japan we know today. Thanks for watching.